Very good evening. As a continuation of what we've been looking into earlier in regard to emotional abuse, different forms, and the intensity, and there was a bit of case we saw that it could be worked. It could be worked when it was when it is considered to be an unintentional one, not purposefully wanting to dominate the other person or take the other person in control. Maybe it was because of certain errors in the brought up or whatever role modeling they had, which can be worked on. Where some simpler cases of when we look into the history of the abuser, certain things we saw that could be worked on as a result to enhance the relationship because like as all of us know that whomever generally a couple approach, whether it is an advocate or whether it is a counselor, they approach area social worker who also do some help in terms of generally people want to put people together because no one wants to shatter a nest. No, it's like how birds build a nest. We humans and birds only have this as far as I know, this tendency to live as families, to build a nest and have children and live with the same partner kind of tendencies. We do have, and the initial patch up work is what one tries to do, and at times when it's not able to, when we are not able to work on it and people are getting suffocated in various aspects, then it's up to that both individuals to take a decision. But in cases where the abuse is a little severe, um, and it could also be as a result of personality disorder that that individual could have. It could be a narcissistic personality disorder where they're more self-centered, and we saw different kinds of silent treatments that people can give to the spouse, whether it is a male giving such a treatment to a female or a female giving such treatment to a male in a relationship. So here, when the intensity is too much to handle, it's necessary for many of us, especially people in the mental health profession, to be a little more updated on what to do. Of course, definitely, we have a very important role here to play to work with the person who's been a victim or survivor of emotional abuse when it is a when the abuse is very severe, and also we have an important role to educate them on the legalities. And for me, um, post my marriage, I felt that I was handling more of couple cases because I feel that as a society, when they look at you, when they look at your profile, when they find that as long as you are miss, maybe people are not more inclined towards coming for couple counseling. When it is Mrs. Swati Priya, then I found more people approaching me for couple counseling, and most of the cases, majority which I have seen, who have approached me are either it is live-in relationships, people who are 5 years within marriage, um, not exceeding 10 years in many cases. I'm only sharing my experience. So, here are some examples of emotional abuse, and I have a few case examples to present to you on extreme abuse and what the survivor needs to do in these cases. How can we empower them? My post graduation in criminal justice helped me to get some insights on how this works, which was really useful for my cases. So, the reason why I spoke about couple counseling cases that I've been seeing recently, it was one of the push motivating factor for me to like study a little bit of law so that I can provide the legal counseling in initial stage of what they need to be doing. Later on, the concerned authority will take charge of, like how we give reference to psychiatrists when we feel that the client is in need of medicines, when it is a addiction case, or if there is extreme anxiety, or we feel that they're severely depressed, they have suicidal thoughts, we refer them to a psychiatrist. Similarly, there's in some cases when they are really helpless, maybe we give it is necessary for us to give reference to an advocate. Generally, when I give a reference to a psychiatrist, I have a check on based on the feedback I get from my clients, whether the person is the right kind of choice based on how the recovery, the prognosis is. Similarly, we have different people offering these kind of services, but when we are referring someone, it's also necessary for us to keep ourselves well informed about the speciality of that particular individual and how the authentic and genuine they are in their field, for us to give a referral. And if there's a like kind of communication, if the client, for example, the client is seeing a particular counselor, and the counselor is able to have a conversation with the psychiatrist, it's really going to help that client. So that way it is more user friend I mean client friendly, if the concerned psychologist is able to help them with the right kind of help or the support system which they need. So, some examples here of emotional abuse include withholding. So, when the person feels that, when the abuser feels that somewhere the victim has converted into a survivor now, they are no more obliging to certain things, and they've started asking them questions. They want records, they want papers of what is happening in the family, anything regarding finances or in terms of children, in terms of property, or whatever. So they might try to withhold their money, which belongs to the survivor, because they are now not knowing any other way of how to catch hold of this person. So I can use these kind of crooked techniques to withhold affection. By not showing affection to children can automatically hurt the spouse. If I'm being very cold towards my children, obviously the spouse gets some kind of insecurity and some kind of discomfort, and even communication, totally not communicating, or either shouting, and sometimes creating a ruckus outside the home, to insult the person, to insult the partner. The person who's responsible for protecting the family abuses the family here. And that is served like a kind of punishment to victims of this kind of an abuse. And here we're talking about emotional blackmail. Yeah, obviously, when it's an emotional blackmail, the relationship is toxic. So the partner definitely knows if they've been with a period of time with each other, what really scares the person, what really threatens the other person, what is a real threat to you. For example, a person would have revealed that before marriage, I was in love with so and so for quite long time, or I was in a live-in relationship with someone, but I really wanted to tell you because I want to be honest to you. I want to be very genuine in this new relationship. Maybe in the beginning of the marriage, they conveyed this to the partner, or even before marriage, they conveyed it to the partner. So this can be now used as a weapon, that I will go and tell my parents and my family about what you did in the past and shame you. I can even go and tell this to your parents if they don't know. He or she can also use this as a method to insult them, blackmail them to not take a step forward. So if you take a step forward and ask me questions, then I will do this to you. And insults. Yeah, we've been looking at insults for even in the previous sessions. Name calling, it can be even body shaming, no? And harsh criticism on the face, talking ill about the person, shaming them in a crowd, putting them down, sarcastic insults, and this can actually affect a person's self esteem when it has been happening for a very long time, and they know very well that the person will tolerate it because if they wouldn't choose someone who would not tolerate this as their target. So maybe they know that this person is a little passive, they're an introvert, or they don't talk for themselves. Maybe now they sense that their confidence is low, is the time when they beat that person up more so that the person shuts himself or herself. Malicious gossip. Generally, when it is a male, they can try to character assassinate the female, to talk ill about her dressing style, to talk ill about what she does, and no, say that I'm suspicious about what she's done, what she's doing. She is talking to someone, she's laughing uh, to others, but she's not nice to me, and such kind of gossips they can have, and right in front of the face also they can say this. And if it is female, maybe they want to put the other person down, they don't know what to say, maybe they use the to put the masculinity of that individual down. In many cases which come to the court, very easily people can say that the partner is important. But people are not no, people use their common sense, and of course, whatever people say, the concerned authority is not taking it just like that, because there needs to be an evidence, there needs to be an examination, which the medical practitioner should give. So just like that, people cannot give such kind of labels or say this, but only to just satisfy that ego. They can use it as a malicious gossip. Sabotage. So, like you're working here. Recently, there was a case where a man went to the wife's workplace and said that um, my wife is not living with me. My wife doesn't want to come to my place and live with me just because you have provided her this job. If you really want a family to live, if you really want your employee to have a marriage life, then please send my wife out. So it's a small institution where he was easily able to approach the manager or the boss and talk about it directly. So now they have a kind of discomfort to keep this particular woman for work. So this is just an typical example of how somebody can damage people's careers, or the other way around, consuming too much alcohol and creating a ruckus outside the workplace. That way, that particular woman was sent out of the job because they gave case on the husband and they don't want to entertain such things anymore. The company, and then yeah, accusations in a romantic relationship. They can be accused of various things: lying, stealing, cheating, any sort of negative behaviors. Always the other person is being wrongful here. Is emotional and psychological abuse against the law? Can I report it or get a restraining order? Emotional and psychological abuse is real and it's damaging. So here we are going to talk about a kind of harassment called stalking. And it's very important for us to know what stalking is. Any man who follows a woman and contacts or attempts to contact such woman to foster personal interaction repeatedly, despite a clear indication of disinterest by such women, or monitor the use by a woman of the internet, email, or any other form of electronic communication, commits the offense of stalking. Stalking is I can make that individual, that male can make this, especially is for a woman. If a male can make an woman feel uncomfortable at workplace or anywhere, or by they can even make them feel discomfort by looking at them for a long time, by staring at them, being watchful of them, such things. So how does this kind of stalking happen in marriage? Stalking in a marriage. So here is a case example. Sanaya has 5 years of stressful marriage life. Sanaya and her husband are middle-aged people. So what he does is some kind of suspicion he has, or maybe he's not um, having anything else to do. Maybe he just wants to he's free enough to go and investigate what his wife is doing, following the wife, and without her knowledge. Within 6 months of marriage, he starts exhibiting this kind of behavior. If she goes to work, he'll also go without her knowledge behind her. He will be somewhere in and around present there for some time and just be watchful of what she's doing and get back again. And even while going to a tailor shop, he accompanies her, and he's very particular that even while taking measurement, it should only be a female, not a male. So there was an argument when a male there was only a male tailor available at that particular time when she wanted to stitch, because the other person was not available. The woman present in that particular shop was not available. So the available designer, when he came forward to take measurement, he was not happy about it. So when being not happy about it is not accepted, is not accepted by the wife, what happens is he's angry. So that anger is accumulated, and that can come out in different ways. First thing is he shows it in his body language and facial expression. He's conveying that I'm not happy with what you did. Interference in choosing clothes, saying that this kind of clothes you should not wear. This kind, if you wear this, people can watch you in a wrong way. This is a safer way to dress. Or making criticisms on choice of colors, and even choosing inner garments to the extent of now, even choosing inner garments, the spouse feels that it's mandatory, that he needs to be there. I'm talking about Sanaya's case. So he will, if she just asks him to just go and sit until she finishes shopping and come because of this kind of interference, he will keep watching in a sitting in a corner of what she's actually doing, whom she's conversing with. And after they get back home, he'll start questioning about certain things which happened in that particular place wherever they went. It could be a shop, it could be the market, whatever. So he has his own assumptions of misconduct of this his spouse. And he also has this habit of placing ears on the door while she's on phone call, constantly gazing at her on outdoor occasions at a party also. Maybe if she's wearing sleeveless, maybe he didn't want her to, but he did not convey at that time. But later on, every time he looks at her, maybe that anger is there in his head, and suddenly there's a change in facial expression when he sees the wife, which is not existing at other times. So this is one thing. And like even if Sanaya feels that let me go for and relax at my mother's place. No, that freedom and space and relaxation she's not able to have because he's stalking her. He's bombarding her with phone calls, not allowing her to sleep. He wants to check on at night whether she's thinking about him or she's happily sleeping. That insecurity he has due to whatever reasons. It could also be that he's showing a personality disorder. And very early in the morning, he'll be there outside. If at all she puts the phone in silent or switches off, and trying to like communicate to the parents that I was very curious of what was happening because her phone was switched off. I was scared. I didn't want to disturb you, senior citizens, late night, and that is the reason I was outside. This kind of reasons he used to give. So whatever it is, we are when we are dealing with these kind of cases, as I told you, to give referral to whomever we know is the best advocate, or in our circle, whomever we know, or they have their own advocate. They can make their own choices, still, they can go with it. And the advocate and other domestic violence professionals, it could be even a social activist or some civil servant who's dealing with this. So they understand how harmful emotional, psychological, and verbal abuse can be. So you can just imagine how suffocating Sanaya's life would have been. Reporting is something that is very important that many do not do when they are victims because they feel they are not empowered enough. They are scared due to fear for whatever reasons. Sometimes even like threatening to destroy their school certificates, college certificates, and creating public nuisance in a way that all of us have the freedom and right to live a life of dignity. So just by disturbing the dignity of the other person, by no putting things in the public, putting private things in the public, Whatever quarrel they can have with their wife, they're putting it in public when they're staying in an apartments, causing public nuisance to people living in the neighborhood, such things. So here in Sanaya's case, I mentioned it's an extreme form of abuse where the spouse encourages the partner to commit suicide. For example, explaining to Sanaya how to kill herself, that she doesn't deserve to be living. So, making her believe every time by repetitive statements that she doesn't deserve to be living, and to also teach her when somebody is really down, they're mentally down, they're crying, they're weeping, or they're really angry. And out of Sanaya's case, Sanaya explained this particular thing that when she was like literally angry with the kind of language, bad language a spouse used on her, like saying that you slept you will sleep with him, you're capable of doing it, such things. So she's uttered statements like, if you keep talking like this, then it's very ugly to me, I feel it's very disgusting to me. So if you continue doing this, I will burn myself, is a statement that she conveys to the spouse. And the spouse says, the response he gives for this is, yes, please do it, because I have not seen such things in reality. I have only seen it in cinema. Could you please show me a demonstration? Is what he asks. So the concern here is, in a fraction of second, anything the person who's not in a stable emotional state can do. Thankfully, she did not. But there is a possibility that that individual can do. Sometimes teaching the person how to hang herself or himself. It happens in some cases. See, this is how you should hang yourself and you have to die. It's something that the person is teaching the other person when the person is crying. No? So this has happened in Sanaya's case. So using emotional vulnerability to provoke the other person. So this is a kind of attempt to kill someone, no? You don't have to directly kill someone, but you are throwing those seeds in the mind of the other person for them to kill themselves is equal to a murder, no? So there are specific laws which will strongly condemn these kind of acts. Forced to perform an act unwillfully. If I don't like something, the other person, the spouse, cannot force the other person to indulge in whatever the person is not comfortable doing. So, this particular, due to some argument at midnight, the spouse forces the wife to get into the car. He doesn't hit the wife, but he forces the wife, compels her to get into the car, repetitively asking her to get in. And she has no clue of where they are going. So he parks the car in a particular place, and the windows are up. She cannot scream, she cannot yell, it's midnight. And she is like crying. All that she can do is crying. And because of whatever suffocation she's going through, she's pleading the spouse by falling on his feet to drop her back at home, because she has no clue of where she is and where the car is parked, and she's going through severe headache. And and then out of helplessness, her phone is snatched from her. He snatches the phone, he takes away the phone. And after an hour of begging and pleading for falling on his feet, he shows mercy on her, drops her at home, early morning. So he took her out midnight, he's dropping her back early morning. So this is a pure criminal act. Criminal act can be reported immediately. If she had reported this in a nearby police station or in the all women's police station, definitely they could have recorded it. People have access to cameras everywhere. If she tells from which area she was traveling, what time she left home, what was the what was happening, such things, if she was able to give clear evidence in a clear state of mind the next day morning in the police station, that would serve as the first information. That would serve as a first information for the police to do whatever formalities they need to do. They can even file a first information report based on whatever this person is giving, information she's giving. So in this case, I asked opinion from a lawyer on what needs to be done, because it was done by the husband. So the person says that whether it is a husband or some stranger or anyone who does it, still it is a criminal offense, and please ask your client to report it in the station. But the person meets me after a very, many months after this incident happened, and I ask her why did she not report what happened. The reply she gives is that the very next morning he fell on her feet and asked sorry, and she was scared to come out and report it. So it's her own fear. For some reasons, they are scared because maybe that individual could be financially dependable on the other person, maybe scared of the society, maybe the parents themselves still want her to live with the parent, live with this person, though they know that he is toxic. For the sake of relatives or society or children or whatever reasons, the society is not letting her, and she is not putting her foot down. People can tell us different things, but at last, I think that particular individual is still an adult and should be capable of putting their foot down and being strong. And that is where we are empowering that survivor. We are empowering that survivor to maintain a certain extent of emotional stability so that they can fight it out. That is what we've been looking at in the earlier sessions also. For us to be mentally stable is very important, because it's a lot to deal with. For the client has a lot to deal with. To empower them, we need to um, help them remove that emotional clouding and be more cerebral, use their mind. Just follow your heart, but take your brain along. Getting a restraint order for emotional and psychological abuse. So how generally this is being described matters. Just imagine that a particular individual is getting into the station and just saying that I'm being emotionally abused. They might not consider what they're saying because of lack of understanding or whatever. Maybe it is not considered that important. Rather, um, to verbalize it in the proper way is very important. To exactly say what happened, to give a clear history of what happened, can help the particular officer to understand what is happening in the life of the person. So just narrate whatever happened. Even the same day where somebody like Sanaya's spouse was provoking her to kill herself. The very next day, she can go and speak and explain the same in the nearby police station. Why I suggest this when somebody else like Sanaya exists also. Why I suggest this is because it's very important to live. It's a right, basic right for that individual to live. So when that itself is in threat, when that itself is a threat, then what else? What else do we expect in that marital relationship? Repeatedly texting or calling for no good reason, when we are asking them to refrain from it for some time because of the emotional suffocation that that individual is going through, even if they've moved from wherever they are staying with that spouse and with their spouse, and they are staying in their parents house, or they moved out to a, PG hostel, whatever, threatening the individual, following them, tracking the individual's location. Sometimes, even when a case is filed, still they're not letting them be at peace. Following, tracking location, as I told you, destroying property of whatever the person has. It could be an important document, sometimes certificates, educational certificates. All this needs to be um, before someone goes for a case, or when someone is planning to fight against that individual for whatever injustice happened to them. It's very important that the basic safety of documents, retrieval of jewelry, or whatever is available at home, whatever is in the access of the person, to just carry it along with them, including children. So safety, I mean, to safety themselves is a priority here. Regarding restraining orders, an advocate who's a member of the bar council will be the best person to help. No one deserves to be treated this way, whether it's a man or whether it's a woman. Here we are talking about domestic violence, where many of us don't are not aware of the fact that emotional abuse also comes under domestic violence. Staying connected with resources or the support system is very important. If the parents' house, friends, the counselor, the lawyer, police, and whoever they need help from, even if the in laws are decent people, not like the spouse, then maybe they also can serve as a support system. When children are grown up, children can also be a support system. To learn more about getting help, how can I help myself, should be the goal of that particular person. Someone like Sanaya, in whatever they're fighting or going through in life. Community service register is maintained at every police station. When there is a complaint registered that my husband is doing this to me, or it can be even for a man's wife who had a diagnosis of borderline personality disorder. Very frequently, she used to give threats to him that if you stay with your mother, if you stay with your parents, if you don't oblige with me, I will kill myself. I will cut my hand. And she used to indulge in self harm. And because he got scared and this behavior was really new to him, and extreme aggressive tendencies that she used to express, to the extent that she lost her first child because she did some kind of thing against her own body, some negative harm to her own body she causes when she's extremely angry. So this has been the history of that woman, and somehow the third child survived, and the relationship was always under strain even after going separately. No, like she wanted to live as a nuclear family. The spouse agreed to it, and they started living as a nuclear family. Even at that time, what she used to do is, if you don't do this, I will kill myself. I will end my life. I will do this because there was a prior history of such attempts. He was scared that something would happen to him because he's someone who's working in an IT company, and there are possibilities that he will be losing his job, and he's the only son to his parents, so he might get into some kind of legal trouble. So out of fear, he goes and gives a complaint in the police station, stating that my wife often is threatening me to commit suicide, which is disturbing to me. And on in after investigation, if they feel that whatever the man says or the woman says is true. So when it is a woman, generally the investigation is transferred to the all women's police station of that particular locality. So if they find it to be true, they just make a number of the complaint. The CSR copy is given that under this complaint, yes, this has happened, and they take in writings that hereafter I will not indulge in whatever it is, and I'm willing to take treatment when I'm getting negative thoughts. I will comply with my husband for taking treatment when I get suicidal thoughts or negative thoughts. So they will take it in writing. So this is a security measure that the husband took. So he had awareness. So he did that. But if we ask if whether everybody has that awareness, no, not everybody. And somewhere we are also learning. We are also in the process of learning. So when it is something like simpler, like a a daily report, CSR can actually serve as a daily diary report kind of thing, that this happened and we are registering it, so that after some few days something goes wrong also, I can still say that this has happened. This was the case and this happened earlier also, kind of thing can be communicated. And so there'll be a separate file maintained when there's an investigation, and if the complaint is numbered, and they've also received the copy of the CSR. And yeah, again, the police advocate would be the best source of information on the above. So we can, in certain cases when there is so much of threat, like how we look into Sanaya's case and we come to know about it. As I mentioned, it's very important for us to provide the necessary legal guidance, whatever we know, whatever little bit we know, to empower that individual, being it male or being it a female, so that they reach out for help to the appropriate officials and the legal system to seek help, because we all know that even the common man knows that physical abuse is a crime, but they fail to dowry is a crime, but they fail to recognize that verbal abuse, emotional abuse are also crimes. Bad mouthing someone, hurting someone, manipulating someone, gaslighting, giving silent treatments, to a great extent, taking control, not allowing the person to live their own life, snatching off the whole life and taking someone's life into control is also a crime. And somewhere, when we go and say that I'm facing emotional abuse, I'm going through emotional abuse, it's not going to work out. But we need to give history of what we underwent. And most of the times, evidence is talk, if it has really happened or not. And this is what I wanted to share today. And I hope that whatever I shared was useful to whoever joined me today. You can tell me your feedback, or if you have some extra information on the same, you can tell me, or you can talk to me about what was your takeaway, anything.
Ma'am, I want to know whether this extreme behavior will have any trigger in the first place.
Yeah, they can have, but it's not that. Maybe if you have followed the series, you would have known. We had spoken about narcissistic traits and other forms of personality disorder traits, which can be minimal to maximum, depending on the severity of what they're exhibiting. Because every case is unique, and there are people who can still take treatment for whatever abuse they, if they are causing abuse also, still they have the option of taking treatment. And sometimes there are in rare cases of what I have seen in my little bit of experience, I've seen that mostly people with the kind of abusive tendencies do not want to come for treatment because they believe that they are okay. Always the problem is with the other person. So in that cases, we cannot do much with the um, people. When both parties can apply, something can work out.
Okay, if one partner is showing such extreme behavior with another partner, this is the outcome of a bad parenting?
Madam, I would suggest one thing. I would share the link with you. All that questions you are asking today is the seventh session of the same topic, where I have spoken about whatever you are asking me today in the previous videos. So I will share that link with you so that you will have a detailed explanation in that video about what you are asking. I will do that.
Okay, okay. And it can be corrected to some extent, right?
Yes, ma'am. If the person has
Okay,
cooperated, it can be corrected.
okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. Someone else? All right. Thank you so much for participating and, as usual, staying throughout from the beginning till now. You stayed and patiently listened to whatever I shared. And please do share if you have any extra information about the topic and whatever you want to. You're free to share in the group as well. Yes, Nidhi.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for the wonderful session.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Ma'am, are you a faculty of IGNU or
Sorry, ma'am.
ma'am, are you a faculty of IGNU too?
I was. I was.
ओके ओके क्योंकि मुझे कुछ ऐसे याद आ रहा था कि स्वाति मैम है ये मैंने देखा हुआ है और
Oh,
ये
okay, okay,
लिंक्ड है मैं आपसे मिली हुई हूँ पास्ट में
okay.
थैंक यू मैम
Thank you.
नाइस मीटिंग यू अगेन
Thank you so much.
Madam, an excellent session, madam. An excellent session indeed. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Swati.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.